Who's actually going to get the most out of the MSI Gaming RTX 5070 Ti, who can safely walk away, and does the price make sense for someone who just wants smooth 1080p or 1440p gaming without breaking the bank? If you've been hesitating because you're not sure whether you're buying a future-proof monster or just another over-engineered card, you're not alone. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon, and I'm going to walk through why that matters in a real-world setup. First off, let's talk about the kind of rig this card wants to live in. The RTX 5070 Ti is built on NVIDIA's new Blackwell architecture, which means you get DLSS 4 and the latest ray tracing cores right out of the box. In practice, that translates to a noticeable bump in frame rates when you enable DLSS in games like Cyberpunk 2077 or Horizon Forbidden West, especially at 1440p with ultra settings. If your monitor is a 144Hz panel, you'll actually see the difference between a choppy 70 frames per second experience and a buttery smooth 120 frames per second run. That's the sweet spot for the card, high refresh 1440p gaming, where the extra horsepower isn't just for bragging rights but actually pushes the visual quality higher. Now, who should consider spending the premium on this card? If you already have a decent CPU, think a Ryzen 7 7800X3D or an Intel 713700K, and you're planning to upgrade to a 4K TV or a 1440p 240Hz monitor within the next year, the RTX 5070 Ti gives you a comfortable cushion. It handles the most demanding titles at 4K with DLSS on, keeping you in the 6070 frames per second range without cranking the fan to white noise levels. That's a real win for streamers who need consistent performance while encoding video, because the extra GPU headroom means the encoder doesn't have to steal cycles from the game itself. On the flip side, if you're still gaming at 1080p on a budget laptop or a mid-range desktop, you're likely overpaying. The card's 16GB of GDDR7 memory is fantastic for texture-heavy games, but at 1080p you'll never saturate that bandwidth. You'll see the same smoothness you could get from a solid RTX 4060 Ti or an RTX 4070, but you'll pay a premium for a GPU that can't be fully utilized. In that scenario, the value proposition starts to crumble, and you'd be better off putting the money toward a faster SSD or a better monitor instead. One of the biggest practical strengths of the MSI model is its cooling solution. The FROZR 4 design, paired with the STORMFORCE Fan assembly, keeps temperatures under 75°C even under prolonged stress tests in games like Elden Ring. In my own build, I ran a 3-hour marathon session of Flight Simulator with the fan curve set to a modest 55% duty cycle, and the card never crossed the 70°C mark. That low temperature translates directly into quieter operation, which is a subtle but appreciated benefit if you're gaming in a shared living space or recording commentary. The nickel plate copper baseplate and square core pipes also mean heat is transferred efficiently from the GPU die to the heatsink, reducing hotspots that can cause throttling in long sessions. However, there are hidden trade-offs you'll notice if you're particular about case clearance. The card measures just under 3 inches thick, but the dual fan setup pushes the overall length close to 12 inches. That's fine in a roomy ATX tower with good airflow, but it can be a nightmare in compact cases or mini ITX builds. I tried slipping it into a 35L case and the side panel barely closed, forcing me to compromise on other components like a larger power supply. If you're already living in a small form factor, you'll need to double-check your dimensions before ordering. Power draw is another area where practicality matters. The RTX 5070 Ti pulls roughly 300W at boost, which means you'll need a quality 750W PSU at a minimum. That's a step up from the 650W units many mid-range builders use, and it adds to the total system cost. The good news is the card is fairly efficient thanks to the Blackwell architecture, so you don't see the kind of power spikes that older generations had. Still, if you're on a tight budget and already have a 600W PSU, you'll either need to upgrade the supply or risk instability under load. What about the everyday user who just wants to play the latest titles without diving into overclocking? The MSI card comes with a factory overclock that pushes the core clock to 2580 MHz. In real-world terms, that translates to an extra 510 frames per second in most games compared to a reference card. You don't have to tweak voltages or mess with BIOS settings to see that benefit, it's baked in. For a typical gamer who installs the drivers, drops the card into the PCIe 4.0 slot, and launches a game, the performance uplift is immediate. That plug-and-play experience is a strength you don't see in the spec sheet but feels huge when you're not a hardware tinkerer. On the downside, MSI's software suite, Dragon Center, can feel a bit cluttered. It does let you fine-tune fan curves and enable a silent mode, but the interface isn't as intuitive.